Hi, this is Shannon from No Shelf Control. Thanks for joining me on the channel today. As you know, this is day 3 of the March Tournament of Books, and we are in round 1. Yesterday, we saw 2 books go head-to-head, and the day before that, we saw 3 books competing to be the 16th book in the tournament, in the play-in round. So this is still round 1, and we have 2 more books going head-to-head today. The 2 books that I'm going to talk to you about today are Mercury Pictures Presents by Anthony Marra and the Book of Goose by Yi-Yun Lee. And as I have on previous days, I'd like first to tell you about the judge who is responsible for picking the winning book today. So today's judge is Christina Orlando. Christina uses they/them pronouns and is the books editor for tour.com, where they get to be a book nerd all day. They are the 2019 recipient of Spotify's Sound Up grant for people of color in podcasting and a 2021 Publishers Weekly Star Watch honoree. Christina currently lives in Brooklyn, New York with their queer found family. It also says that Christina is a champion for diversity in the literary community and dedicated to supporting marginalized voices across the publishing industry. So that tells us a little bit about Christina Orlando and, who they might be and what they bring to the table in judging these 2 books. So that's our first bit of information. The second thing I want to do is give you a little bit of information about each book from the synopsis. So the first one is Mercury Pictures Presents by Anthony Marra. I do really like this cover. Also reminded that Anthony Marra wrote The Constellation of Vital Phenomena. I have not read that, but it's mentioned here on the cover and I have heard of it, so I wanted to mention it to you. Mercury Pictures Presents was published August 2nd, 2022, and it is 416 pages by Hogarth Press. And I'll remind you again that all the books in the tournament had to have been published last year, so these are all 2022 books. As far as Mercury Pictures Presents is concerned, here's the synopsis. The epic tale of a brilliant woman who must reinvent herself to survive, moving from Mussolini's Italy to 1940s Los Angeles. Like many before her, Maria Lagana has come to Hollywood to outrun her past. Born in Rome, where every Sunday her father took her to the cinema instead of church, Maria immigrates with her mother to Los Angeles after a childhood transgression leads to her father's arrest. 15 years later, on the eve of America's entry into World War II, Maria is an associate producer at Mercury Pictures, trying to keep her personal and professional lives from falling apart. Her mother won't speak to her. Her boss, a man of many toupees, has been summoned to Washington by congressional investigators. Her boyfriend, a virtuoso Chinese-American actor, can't escape the studio's narrow typecasting. And the studio itself, Maria's only home in exile, teeters on the verge of bankruptcy. Over the coming months, as the bright lights go dark across Los Angeles, Mercury Pictures becomes a nexus of European emigres, modernist poets trying their luck as B-movie screenwriters, once celebrated architects becoming scale model miniaturists, and refugee actors finding work playing the very villains they fled. While the world descends into war, Maria rises through a maze of conflicting politics, divided loyalties, and jockeying ambitions. But when the arrival of a stranger from her father's past threatens Maria's carefully constructed facade, she must finally confront her father's fate and her own. Written with intelligence, wit, and an exhilarating sense of possibility, Mercury Pictures Presents spans many moods and tones, from the heartbreaking to the ecstatic. It is a love letter to life's bit players, a panorama of an era that casts a long shadow over our own, and a tour de force. So this is set in, right before World War II in Hollywood. So I'm excited by that. Just the whole background of what's going to happen with Hollywood in World War II. And the title, Mercury Pictures Presents, is kind of exciting. Goes along with the cover that I really loved. So I like this era. I like this setting. And there's a bit of a mystery here. We don't know what happened with Maria's father back in Italy, and we're not sure how it's going to come to fruition in the United States. So really interested in this one. I'll be interested to see what the judge has to say about it. But that is the summary for Mercury Pictures Presents. The next book and its synopsis is The Book of Goose, a novel by Yi-Yun Lee. It was published September 20th, 2022 by Farrar, Straus and Giroux, and it's 368 pages. And here's the synopsis of The Book of Goose. A gripping, heartbreaking new novel about female friendship, art, and memory by the award-winning author of Where Reasons End. Fabienne is dead. Her childhood best friend Agnes receives the news in America, far from the French countryside where the two girls were raised, the place that Fabienne helped Agnes escape 10 years ago. Now Agnes is free to tell her story. As children in a war-ravaged backwater town, they'd built a private world, invisible to everyone but themselves, until Fabienne hatched the plan that would change everything, launching Agnes on an epic trajectory through fame, fortune, and terrible loss. A magnificent, beguiling tale winding from the post-war rural provinces to Paris, from an English boarding school to the quiet Pennsylvania home where Agnes can live without her past. The Book of Goose is a haunting story of friendship, art, exploitation, and memory by the celebrated author Yi-Yun Lee. So, my initial reaction to this book is The Book of Goose is a stupid title. I just couldn't get over it when I first heard it. And now, having read the synopsis, I still don't know what the Book of Goose has to do with anything. So I hope it plays a critical part in the book when I read it and that I go, oh, that's why they call it the Book of Goose. But so far, not impressed by the title. Do love the idea that it's set in Paris and the United States and England. Love that this is also a book about fame and fortune. So I'll be interested to check this one out as well. Not taken in by the title, but other than that, I think it sounds very interesting. I love the friendship and the idea that we're going to follow these two women and see what impact they have on each other's lives. So those are the two books and their synopses. Here is what the judge, our friend Christina Orlando, has to say about how they came to the judging. And they say very little, so here we go. They say, we begin with a death, which is honestly one of my preferred ways for books to begin. Beginning with a death means we're existing mostly in memories, which can be a tricky thing. That's all they had to share, as a summary or an intro to their judging. So the rest of what they have to say is about the books independently and then about the final decision that they made. So I will get into that part. With regard to the Book of Goose, Christina Orlando says, the Book of Goose's Agnes admits this: between facts and memories, I always trust the latter, acknowledging that we're not necessarily here for truth, but instead for the effect left, the imprint of the events that are to follow. And indeed, the Book of Goose explores storytelling and fabrications and how they can both make and ruin a life. This book centers on Agnes and Fabienne, victim of the aforementioned death later on, and their childhoods in rural France in the early 1950s. The landscape is devastated after the war, and neither Agnes nor Fabienne have much beyond each other. They bond in the way only girl children can, intensely, with deep understanding and a need for each other, attached at the hip despite adults not being able to see what strings could possibly be holding them there. Out of boredom one day, and perhaps an instinct to cause trouble, Fabienne decides they are to befriend Monsieur Deveau, the local postmaster who has lost his wife, by saying they're going to write a book and asking for his help with it. Fabienne decides she will make up the story, Agnes will write it down, and Monsieur Deveau will serve as editor and publisher. We were not liars, Agnes states, but made our own truths, extravagant as we needed them to be, fantastic as our moods required. What begins as a game catapults young Agnes to childhood fame. Fabienne's decision to only put Agnes's name on the manuscript means that it is Agnes who is brought to Paris to meet with publishers. It is Agnes who gets attention from the press and photographers, and Agnes who is pulled away, causing a trench to form between the two girls. Fabienne is a hellfire of a child, a girl who burns furiously in a way that the world around her, a world made for polite girls who play nice, cannot possibly handle. In a modern world, she'd be a saint, neurodivergent, probably, and the type of character I could easily see in a more modern setting as a sort of Nancy Spungen it girl, drawn to the darkest and grimiest parts of life. I felt her deeply, understood instinctively the storm she held within her, but could not speak of. She could only ever be smothered by her circumstances. The book's prose here is devastating, with truths laid out so eloquently I found myself stopping to take a breather often. While reading, I thought of the many friends I had lost, friends I thought would be forever, and the cruelty of life that forces us to grow up. It is no small feat to capture the love and devastation of childhood friendships turned sour. The Book of Goose is, in short, a most beautiful object. Now, listening to what Christina Orlando has to say about this book, I desperately want to read it. You know, the whole lost friendship, girls growing up together, the whole idea of Fabienne being neurodivergent and sort of a hellfire of a child, as Christina Orlando describes her. I'm just drawn in and want to read that definitively. But the title and the synopsis did not do it for me. So bravo to Christina Orlando for making this book sound appealing. So next up, we have Mercury Pictures Presents and what Christina Orlando has to say about it. Here we go. In a similar vein, Anthony Mara's Mercury Pictures Presents revolves around storytelling. Within the first few pages of Mercury Pictures Presents, Mara deftly defines the cinema as church. It is a place where we go to worship greatness and beg for salvation from our current circumstances. And it is the place where Maria goes with her father instead of church on Sundays. During the rise of Mussolini, Maria's town in Italy is busy with political activity, with the movie theater being a respite. And it seemed outrageous to Maria that the actors on screen would remain impervious to the drama playing out in their audience. She envied them their blindness. The screen is an untouchable god until it is set on fire by black shirts, changing Maria's life forever. Later, in an attempt to save her family from the politics she can't fully understand as a child, she burns records she finds in her father's office, the remnants of which are later found. Her father is arrested. Unable to save him, Maria and her mother make their way to Los Angeles, where the bright lights of Hollywood come to call. We flit between Maria's story at Mercury Pictures in the years leading up to America's involvement in World War II, her father's incarceration in Italy, and the lives of others at the studio, Maria's Chinese-American boyfriend Eddie and the impossibility of leading roles due to his race, and studio's founder Artie arguing before Congress over the importance of depicting reality on screen and the damage censorship can do to storytelling. There's even a cameo from Bela Lugosi. The novel has a lot to say about propaganda and the influence of art in wartime, cultural myth-making, and the craft of filmmaking itself. Clearly, we see the many hands that come to put a film together, invisible in the final on-screen product, and undervalued as a result, but vital all the same. Then she goes on to say, unfortunately, I wasn't engaged by this book. I thought at first that it was a mindset thing. These books were given to me to read over the holidays. Perhaps I was just too burnt out to pay attention. Because I know this about myself, I knew that this wouldn't allow me to make a completely fair judgment of the book. So I tried again later, attempting to set myself up for success, only to again find myself uninterested in continuing, letting my eyes go fuzzy over the words. There are a lot of things that are lovely about Mercury Pictures Presents. I just didn't like it. The prose was not compelling me forward in the way that the Book of Goose had. I did not feel particularly attached to the characters. There are lots of people who loved it. I just didn't find it as beautiful or moving as another story about the immigrant experience at a film studio that came out last year, Guy Vaux's Siren Queen. With a little distance, I'm able to say that though Mercury Pictures Presents is crafted well and conveys emotions and messages that it intends to, it just wasn't a style that resonated with me. So very interestingly, the synopsis of Mercury Pictures Presents drew me in, made me think that I wanted to read the book. But Christina Orlando's review makes me go, oh, okay, maybe not. Whereas the Book of Goose, the synopsis didn't really do anything for me, but Christina Orlando's review makes me think, oh, I have to get my hands on that. So it's amazing what the difference between one perspective and another on a given book can really be. So in summary, here's what Christina Orlando has to say. These two books could not have been more different. Where the Book of Goose is lyrical and lofty, Mercury Pictures Presents does its work in the details. Both are historical fiction, but it matters less in Book of Goose, where emotion takes precedence. The scope of Mercury Pictures Presents is vast and sweeping, whereas Book of Goose is intimately focused on its two girls. At the end of the day, the Book of Goose's profound prose won me over, as evidenced by the many pictures of its pages that now live on my camera roll, stored there for me to return to when I need them, which I inevitably will. All right, so the Book of Goose is advancing in the tournament. Yesterday we saw Mouth to Mouth go forward, so we now have Mouth to Mouth and the Book of Goose as winners in the first round. I can't wait to come back Monday with the third competition round, and we will see which two books go head to head and who comes out the victor. I hope you're enjoying this. If you are, please click the like and subscribe buttons down below. I'm having a great time bringing the Tournament of Books to you, especially if you've never heard of it before, which is what I'm hearing from some of you online. So this is a great romp for me, and I hope that it is a lot of fun for you as well. I will be back Monday with more Tournament of Books, but I will be here over the weekend with a couple of reviews of books that I have read recently. So please join me again, and I will talk to you soon. Bye.